to me that certain commissioners did want to participate. That being said, thank you all for participate in the public hearing in the rulemaking in 20-00159. I'm going to give a little prefatory background, and then we can start with comments.
Hey, let's go on the record and have Allison start recording.
Yes.
And it looks like Commissioner Hall is joining right now.
Oh, good. Good morning, Commissioner Hall. We were about to go on the record for the public comment hearing for the rulemaking in case number 20-00159.
Thank you.
And so right now, you're the only commissioner that's participating, although I've had indications that other commissioners would like to participate, and they probably will be joining soon. I'll give a little introduction to the rulemaking, and then I will go through the list of persons and entities that signed up to participate. I request that those persons and entities that filed written comments give a very brief summary of their written comments. Obviously, they don't have to do this, and I could summarize it for those particular parties if they would prefer. That being said, as you all know, by commission order initiating rulemaking on August 5th, 2020, the commission issued a notice of proposed rulemaking indicating that it was commencing a rulemaking proceeding to adopt proposed amendments to rules 17.9.560.12G, which I will call Rule 560, 17.10.650.11G, which will be referred to as Rule 650, and 17.12.760.9, known as Rule 760. The proposed rulemaking is taking in certain amendments that were made by emergency amendment on March 18th, 2020. Those amendments prohibited disconnection of residential customer utility service for the duration of time that the governor's executive orders related to the COVID-19 pandemic were in effect. A copy of the proposed amendments were attached to the August 5th order as Exhibit A. The note, Exhibit B to the August 5th order was the notice of proposed rulemaking, which was published in the New Mexico Register on September 15th. And at 2020, it provided notice that a public hearing on the proposed amendments would be held today, October 21st, 2020 at 9 a.m. via the Zoom platform. In addition, the notice of proposed rulemaking set out October 16th, 2020 as a deadline for submission of written comments. On October 16th, 2020, the commission received written comments from the following entities.
Ms. Amer, you're breaking up.
Southwestern Service Company, New Mexico Gas of the PRC, New Mexico.
Is there any way you could get closer to your router? You're dropping out pretty regularly. We're having a hard time hearing you.
Hello, can you hear me again?
We can, but it's on and off.
Where did I break up?
I have you starting to list the the people making comments.
Okay.
Yeah, Judy, why don't
PNM,
you try turning off your camera? That might make more bandwidth available to your just audio.
okay.
Just click stop video.
Uh,
Let's try that.
PNM, EPE, SPS, New Mexico Gas Company, Commission Utility Division staff, New Mexico Rural Electric Cooperatives, and the New Mexico Attorney General. In terms of our sign up sheet, I have a sign up sheet and I'm going to go through organization by organization and request that one person, even though more than one person might be present from that organization, give a brief summary of either their written comments or the reason that they're participating. And I'll start with SPS Excel. Who would like to speak? Yes.
Morning, Judith. This is Mike Antonio, SBS. Can you hear me?
Okay. Yes, I can hear you. Thank you.
Great. Thank you for the opportunity to comment. I'll be brief. SPS filed comments on October 16th, 2020 regarding this rulemaking. We stated at that time that we had no comments, but reserved the right to respond to comments filed by others. SPS is concerned about the long-term effects of the growing arrears on all of our customers due to the pandemic. We understand the need for the Commission to resolve the procedural issue associated with the temporary rule. We support New Mexico Gas Company's suggestion related to revisiting the extension of the suspension on a regular basis, but we suggest first doing this in January of 2021 rather than in March 2021, as suggested by the New Mexico Gas Company. And also we suggest that the discussion should include related issues such as treatment of arrearages, use of payment plans, and long-term impacts. This will help to ensure the Commission is considering the most current status of the pandemic and its effect on customers and utilities consistent with good public and regulation policy. And that's the end of our comments. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, I will go to PNM. I have a note that Mark Fenton, I believe, would be speaking on behalf of PNM to give a brief summary of their comments.
Yes, Judith, can you hear me?
Yes. Hello.
Hi, how you doing? I'll make them real brief. We filed pretty extensive comments on October 16th, but I'd really like to focus on a couple things. I want to reiterate that PNM's comments were not directed at disconnecting customers, but rather encouraging customers to engage in payment plans that will serve to both reduce their individual obligation and preserve their service while also reducing the arrearage and potential bad debt. As noted in our comments on October 16th, the proposal to insert the Commission's temporary emergency language in the Commission rules prevent more flexible responses. And what we're concerned about is it leading to an insurmountable financial hurdle for residential customers when the moratorium is lifted in the future. The truth of the matter is we would not expect to actually disconnect many customers during this period. This proposal is not intended to go back to normal business during the COVID-19 period. We would only consider disconnects under very special circumstances for those that are clearly not in need and are abusing the process to blatantly avoid payment. We would even be willing to work with staff as directed before doing an actual disconnect. What we were wanting to really alert the Commission to is that our tracking, we've been making monthly compliance filings with the commission. We also do weekly tracking. In our latest weekly numbers, our total arrearage has grown to about $17.9 million. We have started doing commercial customer disconnect notices. We haven't been disconnecting commercial customers, but just doing the notice. And we have found that those notices have really assisted us in knocking down the arrearages, reducing the arrearages. And we think it's very important to get those numbers down because eventually we come out of COVID. If that number is an astronomical number, there's going to be an issue with recovery. As I presented a couple weeks ago at the commission, PNM has actually implemented a COVID relief fund where we put $2 million of shareholder money into that fund, and Help New Mexico is matching that with about $2 million of additional funding. But what we're finding thus far is that it's been very limited people using that fund, those funds, because of the moratorium. We provided a lot of comments that indicated what has been happening in other states, and I think other states have found out the same thing until they at least have a threat. Threat is probably the wrong word, but when there's a moratorium, people just tend not to pay. So I really want to emphasize that we don't want to disconnect people. That's not the plan. We laid out a plan where we would work with the customer. LIHEAP customers would continue on the winter moratorium, so they wouldn't be impacted. And actually, LIHEAP customers that go all the way back to last November, they wouldn't be impacted. We would only encourage the commission to lift the moratorium for non-LIHEAP residential customers and require utilities to provide notice to these customers that they need to enter into a payment arrangement with the utility, and then we would work with them. So I really want to emphasize this is not PNM going back to normal. We want to disconnect a lot of customers. We just want to get the arrearages down because they are just skyrocketing right now. So, and the rest of the comments I think speak for themselves, but we would be willing to work with the staff on this too before we'd actually do a disconnect. It would be very limited in our mind. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Mark. I don't know if Nick is listening, but staff and Brad Borman stated that they need an invite to this to be able to participate. So would you please send them an invite?
Ed, Brad, who else getting?
Brad and perhaps John Reynolds.
Okay, I'll do that right now.
But I know at least that. Right, thank you. Next, I have the New Mexico Rural Electric Cooperative Association. Either Grunwald, would either one of you be able to briefly summarize your position on the rule changes proposed?
This is Kevin Grunwald, CEO of the New Mexico Rural Electric Co-op Association. Again, being brief, I think our comments were fairly clear. It really comes down to clarification that this is about non-payment. There are many other different reasons that disconnects can happen. Safety issues, tampering. We just think that, you know, with guidance from the commission staff, when we've had instances where questions became whether disconnects could happen or not happen. We've been in a situation where we've been, you know, deciding on the order of caution, and have not disconnected. However, I'll give you a couple examples of, tampering, where we've seen, for instance, a residential consumer is not disconnected, but family members or other pull up 3 or 4 RVs and run cords through the window to get electricity, which we don't think is right. We think we should be able to prevent that from happening. An owner of a property calls and says disconnect, and they're the person that has the meter in their name, but there's others living there. An example where we've had a member that has passed away and the service is in their name, and they normally, according to the commission rules and, co-op rules, they should be disconnected or should be put in someone else's name. And that hasn't happened. It's continued to be in the name of, the deceased person. And we think that should be, the rule should be more, should be clarified that it's only about non-payment. I would ask Dan to, further elaborate if he has other things, but those are briefly our things. We think the rule needs to be more specific. For instance, we probably have had over 40 different executive orders since March, and very few of those would really pertain to electric service. Some of it is like funding of school districts and things like that. Those don't really pertain to us. So we just think that the rule probably needs to be tightened down a lot more in those areas. Those are my comments. I'd ask Dan if he has anything else to add.
I have nothing else to add. I think Kevin's last point is we would like there to be an ongoing mechanism by which the commission reviews which executive orders related to COVID are out there and determines whether those orders have any bearing on the ability of customers to pay their bills. And for those, like he mentioned, that might be funding related, that should not trigger the prohibition. But that's it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Dan and Kevin. Next, I will go to Jemez Mountain Electric Cooperative.
Yes, this is Ernesto Gonzalez with Jemez Electric, and we have some of our staff and some of our board members, and myself and a board member will be making comments. In Jemez's case, our revenues comparing June of 2019 and June of 2020, September 2019 and September 2020, our total revenues are down by 12%. And overall, our delinquents, comparing March of 2020 and September of 2020, our overall delinquents have gone up by 36%. And our 90-day delinquents by itself are up for that period of time, 74%. In our case, it has put the Jemez Electric in a real tight cash flow, creating a very, very severe cash flow problem. As an example, we buy the power from our wholesale power supplier, Tri-State. We do sell it to our residential consumers and we bill it, but we're not getting paid for it. And we're paying upfront to Tri-State for our power. So that puts a farther bind on our cash flow. What we would like to see is some kind of immediate relief so that we could start collecting on some of our delinquent consumers. And we are willing and understand that we will have to work with the residential consumers to collect the high amounts, because in some cases there has been no payment at all since March. And we would like some kind immediate relief, even though it might be temporary on the moratorium. And with that, I would ask one of our trustees, John Tapia, to make some additional comments. John?
I would, this is Marielle Nanasi, and I would just object, Ms. Amer, if you are conducting this meeting. I believe that there was an order that came out yesterday, on the 19th of October, and I refer to you in decretal paragraph C, and it says specifically, only one individual will be allowed to comment on behalf of any one entity. And already this morning, we've seen 2 people speaking for one entity, and this is the second time. And, on behalf of New Energy Economy, we could have had lots of people come onto this Zoom call, but I abided by the rules, and I think that we should have them adhere to. Thank you. So I'd object.
Yes, this is Paul Gibson, and I'm representing Retake Our Democracy, and I'd reiterate what Marielle said. We have 3,000 members. We could have had 150 or 200 people if we wanted to, and yet I'm here to speak for them. And so I object to having the utilities just come out and trot out their various representatives and staff, who, by the way, are paid. I'm a volunteer. So I object to this as well.
Understand. Okay.
Thank you very much, Mr. Gibson and Ms. Nanasi. That was written in the order, and I would like to request the commissioners who are present to state their opinions as to whether or not they would like to allow more than one person from one organization to comment. And then make a motion and modify the order. Yes.
Judy, this is
Commissioner
Vicente
Aguilar.
I would like to
Yes.
let everyone know that I heard everybody's concern, and I need to get off this meeting so I can get prepared for the commission meeting. But I think my comments are going to be referred to more of an interest of what the representatives and organization had to say. So at this point, I will not weigh in one way or the other. Thank you very much, Judy.
Judy, can you hear me?
Yes, I just would like to, I don't know if Commissioner Vicente Aguilar is still there, but the open meeting is going to start after this hearing, which is going to end at the latest 10 o'clock, because the court reporter is only being here for an hour. And if we need to continue this public hearing, then we will continue it at another date and time if we are not concluded at 10. That being said, I just wanted to let you know that. And
so maybe leave plenty of time for the utilities to take multiple opportunities to speak, so that the people who are speaking for grassroots organizations have to come back another time at someone else's convenience.
Excuse me, Judy, I'm sorry. I'd like to speak because you asked for the commissioners to respond.
yes.
And my personal view is that I think we should stick to what we said in our order. It's very clear. People have noticed. There's no reason to turn this into a bigger thing than it is. We want to hear the information, but we need it done in an efficient way. So that's my position.
Thank you, Commissioner Hall. Commissioner Fishman.
Actually, I agree with Commissioner Hall, particularly given the 1 hour time frame that we have to complete this. I do want to say that I've read everything that the utilities have sent in terms of their comments on the rule. I do believe they raise some points that are worthy of consideration. So I just want to let you all know that doesn't mean I'm in any way shutting down some of the issues that you're raising. And I do believe we can do lots of things to improve what we do with this rule, protect consumers, and respond to the utilities' concerns as well. So please don't take this as anything more than just a procedural step, but let's stick to the rules.
Thank you, Commissioner Fishman. Commissioner Byrd.
I agree. Anything that they feel wasn't covered should be submitted in writing as acceptable and will be considered, of course. But let's stick to the rules that we have for today's.
Thank you, Commissioner Byrd. With that being said, we will only allow one person per entity to speak in accordance with
Madam Chair Judy, this is Commissioner Espinosa. I don't know if you're aware that I am online as well.
Good morning, Commissioner. Please comment.
Well, I think the information that has been given here is very useful, and perhaps Ms. Nanasi is correct, but I wish we could have heard from more people. And the timing of this, to have it on the Commission Day meeting is kind of hard because I'm really interested in this moratorium information. And so the more people that are allowed to speak, the better it would have been for my information. Unfortunately, if that's what the rule was set, then we should abide by that. And so if we need to continue this and change that for the next meeting to allow, at least 2 other participants maybe, but more than that, but, set something like that. But I think it's going to need to be continued because we are not going to get to hear everything in the next half hour. So, and that information is useful and it's important because it's impacting these businesses. So, their debt is growing, and I'd like to hear from all of them and the consumers that it impacts too. So anyhow, I guess if we have to stick to the rules, we better do that and see what we can get done in this half hour. And my hope is that it will continue at some point.
Thank you, Commissioner Espinosa. At this point, I will determine that we will be following the order. We will have one person speak per organization for the time frame set forth in the order. If we are not finished by 9:55, we will continue the hearing and we will issue a subsequent order stating the date and time and setting the parameters, taking into consideration what Commissioner Espinosa stated, maybe 2 per organization, but that will be determined in the future. But presently we will have 1 per organization. And at this point, I would like to call on Mr. Gibson. Does he have any comments?
Sorry, I was just unmuting. Yeah, my name is Paul Gibson, and I'm the co-founder of Retake Our Democracy, a statewide 501c4 organization with over 3,000 subscribers. We are in a crisis nationally and in New Mexico. Despite the vigilant efforts of our governor, New Mexico is experiencing a virulent spike in COVID cases. Thousands of New Mexicans who had been living on the edge of poverty are now being plunged into it. Even before the pandemic, New Mexico ranked 49th of 50 states in concentration of poverty, with over 400,000 New Mexicans living in poverty. Historically, PNM has not cared much about the struggles of the poor. Sure, they will spend money on glossy mailers and smiley-faced ads on television. They'll make small donations to scores of local community sports and arts programs. But when it comes to the poor, they will shut off their power or threaten to do so without a thought to what it really means to live without power. what it means to have to make choices between losing refrigeration and their medications. No, in 2017, PNM sent shut-off notices to almost 400,000 customers. And in 2018, they sent shut-off notices to 365,000 more. PNM has just described their concern that the arrears has now reached $17 million. And so they're sending shut-off notices have helped to contain that number. They didn't have any comment about what a shut-off notice means to a family in poverty and the kinds of decisions it forces them to make. PNM also fails to mention that while there is no question many of their customers have been thrown into poverty by COVID and the resulting recession, it is hard to compare PNM's poverty pleas with those whose power they threaten to cut off. PNM states that the reduced load impacts of COVID-19 from commercial customers in 2020 have been offset by higher temperatures requiring the need for more air conditioning. Overall, PNM's electric load increased and PNM enjoys a corresponding profit increase during COVID-19. In September 2020, PNM made a presentation to its investors. PNM's investors' earnings per share was higher than previously projected, they said. Its $3.3 billion investment plan supports a 5 to 6% earnings growth through 2023. I'm not sure many of those receiving shut-off notices have that rosy a projection. Its immediate equity needs were met. It had long-term adequate liquidity available to finance all business needs. It has $1 billion in available liquidity and $361 million in securitized bonds. PNM's executives have been richly compensated, with their CEO earning north of $5 million, their CFO making north of $2.5 million, and 3 other top executives all earning more than $750,000 a year. As New Mexicans have been struggling to make ends meet, even before the pandemic, PNM's executives and shareholders reported net earnings of $85.6 million in 2018 and $79 million in 2017. Compare this to those who suddenly find themselves out of work and out of options, our neighbors who must count pennies to pay rent, who must juggle paying Medicare. I'm almost done.
You have one more minute.
Okay, I'll be done in 1 more minute. Thank you. These are tens of thousands, perhaps hundreds of thousands of New Mexicans, fellow New Mexicans whose power is being threatened by cutoffs. In a civil society, one that cared more for people than profits, you wouldn't need these rules. You would have corporate entities that cared more for its customers than its profit line. If PNM were in dire financial straits, this would be different. But as I've laid out, their executives are making millions and their shareholders are making profits. 20 other states and the District of Columbia have existing utility shutoff moratoriums in place. If any state needed these protections for ratepayers, it is New Mexico. In a better world, we would not need it, but I think we do here. I doubt any New Mexico PNM execs will have to reconsider their home budgets with these rules in place. And I want to thank the PRC for being courageous in protecting our most vulnerable New Mexicans from PNM. Thank you very much for your time. And for
Thank you, Mr. Gibson. Excuse me, I didn't hear the last comment. Thank you.
I was just thanking you for your service.
Next, I would like to hear from New Energy Economy, Mary Ellen Nasi.
Good morning, Chairman Fishman and Honorable.
Again, I just want to reiterate that the orders stated that you have up to 5 minutes.
Well, actually, I think that Commissioner Fishman's order said revise that as well and says we only have 3 minutes. So I'll abide by the rules. Good morning, Chairman Fishman and Honorable Commissioners. I must begin by thanking you, and especially Commissioner Espinoza, for bringing this important rulemaking that seeks to protect the most vulnerable among us. As one of the greatest novelists and thinkers, Fyodor Dostoevsky, said, a society should be judged not by how it treats its outstanding citizens, but by how it treats its criminals. A modern day reinterpretation of this quote is, our society should be judged not by its wealthiest citizens, but by how it treats its most vulnerable people. I thank you for standing with and unflinchingly side by side the most vulnerable with this rulemaking. 20 states and the District of Columbia have enacted moratoriums on utility shutoffs, period. Thank you for considering joining the list of Alaska, Washington, California, Wyoming, Colorado, Minnesota, Wisconsin, Arkansas, Kentucky, Maine, Vermont, New York, Rhode Island, Connecticut, Pennsylvania, Delaware, Maryland, Massachusetts, New Hampshire, and Hawaii. New Energy Economy joins the Attorney General to support PRC's staff proposal to slightly amend, but importantly amend, the rulemaking to include their proposed language in Rule 560, quote, irrespective of any conflict with 17.5.410 NMAC. Equally, we support PRC staff's proposed revisions to Rule 760. Otherwise, New Energy Economy supports the rulemaking as is. PNM has cried victim once again. They state that they have $17.5 million in residential and commercial arrearages, and oppose the utility shutoff moratorium because there will be, quote, insurmountable past due balances on customers' utility bills, and the bad, quote, avoidable debt will accumulate and need to be spread over all other customers because PNM expects that the debt will be paid down in full by everyone else. A couple of points to consider. One, there is no presumption that a utility is entitled to recover any of these alleged losses in a future rate case. That claim will be fully scrutinized in other proceedings going forward. Two, as this commission has acknowledged, Governor Michelle Lujan Grisham has declared a state of public health emergency in New Mexico as a result of the novel coronavirus disease known as COVID-19. In the midst of this unprecedented public health crisis, the negative impact to the economy has caused many individuals and families to suffer severe financial difficulties. COVID-19 is a highly infectious and fast-spreading virus. Symptoms and their effects can range from mild to severe, and in certain cases result in extreme health complications and death. Third, our Supreme Court has decided that the Public Regulation Commission's constitutional, that's people-powered, duty to regulate utilities requires the commission to review and exercise discretion over proposed rates to ensure that they are just and reasonable, that they fairly balance the interests of ratepayers and investors, and that the rate-making process involves a balancing of investor and consumer interests. Whether PNM or any of the monopoly private utilities and co-ops are entitled to any cost recovery for this alleged bad debt is a matter of future decision-making, and the commission need not concern itself with that issue at present. Just so you all know, there was an announcement this morning that Avangrid is buying PNM for $4.3 billion, 20% more than its current worth. And so here we need not worry that shareholders are going to be taken care of. Just a bit of reality here. Four, I'm almost done, but
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. While PNM and other for-profit monopoly utilities oppose the utility shutoff extension, PNM brags about their financial superiority to their investors, what's particularly offensive in these times. PNM's position vis-a-vis its latest 2020 presentation to Wall Street, which I'm happy to send in and make it part of the record, including my statement, says that while there is a decrease in commercial accounts, they have an increase, a steady increase in residential accounts resulting from the stay-at-home orders. Additionally, they say in their own words that there will be no significant impact to the profits of their shareholders whatsoever. Lastly,
Thank you.
Judy, I'd like to hear this. Judy, please, I'd like to hear the rest of this.
5 minutes are up. I will now go to.
Judy, can we let her finish her sentence, please?
Yes, please finish your sentence. I'd like to move on to El Paso Electric.
Okay, this is the last thing. P&M states at page 6 of their comments to you filed on Friday that, quote, many customers are declining to participate in payment plans or to make partial or full payments on bills even when they are able to pay some or all of the balance due. And we heard that from others as well. But in P&M's response to the New Mexico Attorney General's discovery in the decoupling case number 20-00121, they said exactly this under oath, quote, P&M does not retain or maintain customer income information. So there is actually no way that, if that's true, that they know if their customers are able to pay but are just withholding payment. Is that a racist dog whistle? That's my last comment. I'm happy to turn in my comments with P&M's 2020 presentation, and I ask you to adopt this rule in full with staff's modest amendments. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Nanasi. Now I will go to one representative from EPE. Who will that be? Ms. Olson?
Thank you, Ms. Amer. I'm going to defer to Gerbe, who I believe is on the phone. He'll be EPE's spokesperson on this.
Who was that?
It's Joe Garibay with El Paso Electric Company.
Okay.
Thank
you.
Thank you for the opportunity to comment on the rulemaking. El Paso Electric's position is we would like to start engaging with our customers again so that we can help them, guide them to assistance so they can start getting their debt down. Especially the LIHEAP customers. We're in moratorium in November of last year and went straight into this moratorium. If they go into moratorium again in November, it will be 16 months for some of these customers. And that is an enormous amount of debt for them to carry. This customer class doesn't have the kind of financial means, as we've just heard, to really take care of debt like this. If we don't start working with them and guiding them to assistance so that they can start getting help, that debt will be so large that we're talking about 2-year, possibly 3-year arrangement plans to try to get them to an opportunity to pay this off. And again, that's a lot of debt for this customer class. We don't really want to go out there and start disconnecting. That is not our position at all. Our position is they will not go into payment plans until they know there's something out there that they have to. And if they don't have to do it, they won't do it. The debt will continue to go up, and that will create more issues long term. Again, we do not want to go out there and start disconnecting. It is not our plan to do that. We simply want to start engaging our customers so that we can get them to go to assistance, get help, and pay this debt down. That's our comment.
Thank you very much. Next, I will go to the New Mexico Attorney General, Mr. Gideon Elliott.
Good morning, commissioners. Thank you for having this hearing. I will just reiterate what we stated in our comments, which is that the Attorney General opposes any rule that's going to allow the utilities to resume disconnects. I'll remind you, as I'm sure you all know, the reason we needed this rule to begin with was because the governor had declared a public health emergency. And our priority is to make sure that the citizens of New Mexico can comply with the public health orders that the governor may issue, which may include that they stay home. And so we think that the short-term risk at this point, it far outweighs the long-term challenges that ratepayers may have with their arrears. Because we need people to stay alive if they're going to pay those bills. So thank you very much. We also think that staff made some really good proposals, as Ms. Nanasi said. So we appreciate you having this hearing today. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Elliott. Next, I will go to Mr. Tom Domi Company.
Yes, good morning. I'm with New Mexico. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Good. Okay, I'm with New Mexico Gas Company, and we did file written comments. I will simply address what we try to get across in the tone of our comments. We appreciate the dire straits that the state is in, that the customers are in, and so forth. Our intent in our comments was to emphasize that, and as evidenced in this hearing today, that we have got to keep the lines of communication open. And so what we've advocated for is a series of steps to where we can stay in communication and work through the intended consequences of an indefinite extension of this rule and the unintended consequences of this to the ratepayers, to the companies, to the consumers, to everybody. And so the tone of our comments is we need to set rehearings as well as workshops to work out the interplay between the regulatory asset that has been provided by this commission as well as the moratorium that is being discussed today. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Domi. Next, I would like to go to, I don't know if Brad Borman or John Reynolds would like to speak on behalf of staff.
Thank you, Ms. Amer. This is Brad Borman, and I will speak very briefly on behalf of staff. Staff filed comments in this matter, and basically they were largely addressed towards a conflict that we saw between the proposed rule changes in Rules 560 and 650 with the Commission's Rule 410, which directly addresses residential disconnections. And so we identified, well, we feel that, you know, fixing or making these changes to 650 and 560 is probably not enough to accomplish the purpose that the Commission is trying to reach here. And so we think that something needs to be done to Rule 410 to address this. In fact, quite frankly, it's probably all of these are best addressed in 410, but at the very least, something needs to be done to Rule 410 to accomplish the task sought. That's pretty much it for my comments.
Thank you, Mr. Borman.
Judith, this is Commissioner
Yes.
Fishman. I just wanted to ask a question from Brad. I haven't had a chance to read the staff comments yet, but can you give just a little bit of context on what Rule 410 is?
Well, Rule 410, and I don't have the whole rule open, but one of the things that it does, let me see if I can find our comments here. I've got too many windows open. But Rule 410 is residential customer service by gas, electric, and rural cooperative electric utilities. And that basically, as we point out in our comments, sets out standards to be followed by those utilities in serving residential customers. Part of that is standards associated with discontinuance of service. That would be in 17.5, 410.31 NMAC, and prohibitions that are set forth in .32. There's also a rule, I think it's 410.2B, that basically says in case of conflict between provisions of this rule and 17.9.560 NMAC or 17.10.650 NMAC, the provisions of this rule control. So that suggests that, where there are rules that may conflict between Rule 410 and the other rules that the commission is looking to amend here, that 410 should control. Well, if you make these proposed changes to 650 and 560 without addressing 410 and at least that language that I just pointed out, you still have that kind of language in 410 that gives that rule supremacy.
Thank you.
So somehow you're going to have to fix that.
I realize that it's 55 and just informed or could keep going if the commissioners wanted to. At this point in the hearing, I intended to go to commissioner questions of people who already spoke. So I'd like to hear from the commissioners about how you would like to proceed at this point.
Judy, I think we should continue this meeting to a second time. This is Commissioner Hall, because, we're halfway through or partway through.
Okay.
And I guess we have to go to the next meeting. Are we scheduled to stop exactly at 10 to proceed with our next meeting? Isn't that what you said before?
Yes.
On the agenda, it stated that the meeting would start. The meeting would start after the hearing, and we had originally arranged the court reporter for 1 hour.
Well, this is an information gathering meeting,
So,
right? This is information gathering.
It's a public hearing on the rulemaking.
Right.
It's a public hearing on the, and the proposed matter is on the agenda for potential action, but you could defer that as well. You can continuing the hearing.
Judy, you broke up.
Commissioner Fishman, Commissioner Fishman?
Yeah, can everybody hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, good. If we're losing the court reporter, I would just assume all the comments go on the record. How many people have not commented yet, Judy, who were on the agenda?
That's my question.
Okay. Hold on, I have to open up. I need to open up my sign-up list.
If I may, this is Marielle Nanasi, New Energy Economy. From what I see on the Zoom is that there's not that many more people, and this was noticed for today. And in order to accommodate the public, if the commission is willing and the hearing and the court reporter is able, I would ask that you all accommodate the public and just continue the rest of this hearing, which I don't think will go on for that much longer. Thank you for your consideration.
Yeah,
That's fine with me. That's fine with me.
Yeah, that's fine with me too, if the court reporter can stick around and everybody gets their comments on the record.
Commissioner Fishman, that's exactly what we should do. Just wrap it up and vote on it this afternoon.
Okay, I have my final participant list, and the people who have signed up to participate that have not spoken yet are Epcor Water, and then Paul,
Judy, why don't we go ahead
Eric
and
Diego,
proceed?
Castillo Aguilar, and Selma Gutierrez.
So,
Tanya Lovato, Rhonda Haynes.
so if we
So
can
that's
be,
it. So
so if
I,
we can, if we
Joan
can,
Brown also, thanks.
okay.
yeah,
my-
I did say, you would like to continue. So
If the court
is the
reporter
court reporter,
stick around.
can you continue? Okay, I got a thumbs up.
Yes, I
So
can.
next,
I can. However, if you are not speaking, could you please mute your mic? I'm getting a lot of feedback.
Yeah, I think it's Judy.
okay, I'll mute myself. Next, I would like to hear from Joan Brown.
Great.
Thank you, Commissioners, for taking comments today. So my name is Joan Brown. I'm a Franciscan sister, and I'm the director of New Mexico Interfaith Power and Light. And we work with faith communities all over the state to address concerns of energy and climate and justice. So I appeal to you for an extension of the moratorium today that prohibits the discontinuation of residential customer utilities, and also to support a waive on the late fees on those residential accounts, and also in support of extending expiring medical certificates beyond 90 days. New Mexico Interfaith Power and Light works with faith communities. Traditionally, our faith communities are the ones that have assisted utilities, have assisted residents in order to keep their utilities turned on. And these are the most vulnerable in our state, in our communities. And even though this is a very stressful time for our faith communities, they continue to do this assistance. And if they can do this assistance, we believe that companies, which have a lot more padding than faith communities, can continue to be good neighbors and of service during this pandemic time when there are so many resources that are stretched and our neighbors are in need. Also, during this pandemic, it seems like everybody's been home working, et cetera, and homeschooling. So utilities have gone up. So the utility companies are, I would assume, making a lot more money than they were before because of the usage, which would also help offset the extension of this moratorium and a waiver of late fees. As a Catholic, Pope Francis just came out with a new encyclical that focuses on social friendship and the economy and social responsibility. And he talks about the story of the Good Samaritan. When the neighbor is in need, do we walk by or do we stop and help that neighbor? And the measure of our civility and our souls is measured by how we respond. In this moment, I believe that our utility companies need to be good neighbors. And they even have a program called the Good Neighbor Fund, which I and many, many others contribute to. Now is their time to be good neighbors as well. In this teaching document, which was written during the COVID, Pope Francis says, some parts of our human family, it appears, can be readily sacrificed for the sake of others considered worthy of a carefree existence. Ultimately, persons are no longer seen as paramount value, cared for and respected, especially when they are poor and disabled and they are not considered useful. So at this point here in our state, everyone is of importance and is not just useful, but they are our brothers and sisters. And we need to be responding, especially in this time of stress, as individuals, as communities of faith, and as industry to care for one another. Heat, water, food, and healthcare are minimum human needs, and we all must care for our communities. So I appreciate your consideration. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Brown. Now I will go to EPCOR Water.
Thank you, Daniel Baylett here, Vice President and General Manager of EPCOR Water, New Mexico, and thanks again for the opportunity to provide just a few comments. EPCOR was among, I think, probably the majority of utilities in New Mexico that voluntarily suspended disconnections prior to, any order from the governor for the commission. So appreciate the comments from the last speaker on being a good neighbor. I think a lot of the utilities feel that we are, and we certainly understand the need during the COVID-19 public health emergency to suspend disconnections, and we have no objections to the proposed rules. At the same time, echoing the comments of the other utilities, we're concerned about the growing arrearages balance and the lack of customers making any effort to make payment plans or extensions. It's not all about big investor-owned utilities. EPCOR happens to be the largest private utility in New Mexico, but I sit on the board of the New Mexico Water Utilities Association, and there's dozens of family-owned and small businesses that are having a tough time with this. We need to keep the water running, and cash flow is becoming an issue. In our particular situation at EPCOR, our 60-day plus past due balance is becoming a very significant amount. I did a quick calculation this morning. It's now about 5% of our approved revenue requirement, and that's growing every day. So, assuming that bad debt were to become eligible regulatory asset and collected through rates, looking at it simplistically, in our case in New Mexico, that'd be a 5% rate increase right there, ignoring all the other cost increases in capital that we need to put in the ground to keep the utility running smoothly. So, we agree that with other utilities that the commission should conduct a regular review as to the situation and to start a conversation about how we can mitigate this. And, one area that's been mentioned before about making sure that customers have some kind of good faith effort also to make monthly payments, however little, to lower the outstanding delinquencies and reduce the bad debt and avoid some of these equity issues to the other customers that are continuing to pay. So it's a real issue, not just the big utilities, but a lot of us smaller guys too. And we appreciate the commission's attention to the matter.
Thank you very much. Next, I will go to Mr. Christopher Hall.
Thank you, commissioners, for your time to speak today. My name is Christopher Hall. I live in Santa Fe. I'm a 3L third-year law student at University of New Mexico School of Law. And I'm commenting on behalf of myself and on behalf of UNM School of Law Professor Gabriel Paciniak. Been working and looking at utility ratepayer issues throughout the summer and throughout the fall term. First, I want to just start by saying we strongly support the promulgation and implementation of the rules, proposed rulemaking today. I also came today specifically to urge the commission to also consider amending or temporarily suspending the requirements for the winter heat moratorium.
Excuse me, I can't understand you. Can you?
I'm sorry, I'll try to.
There you go, closer to the mic, please.
Sorry. So I came today specifically to urge the commission to also consider amending or temporarily suspending the requirements for the winter heat moratoriums under NMAC 17.5, 10, 29, and 30. The commission should take steps to ensure that customers who qualify for LIHEAP are eligible for winter heat moratorium protections, even if they entered into arrears during the COVID-19 public health emergency and are not currently paying toward an installment or a settlement agreement with the utility. I also urge the commission to consider a future rulemaking to amend its regulations in order to address the impending emergency situation that will arise when this public health emergency ends, by requiring utilities to offer at minimum 12-month installment agreements to residential customers for years. And today I just wanted to add, things aren't getting better, things are getting worse. Everything is going up but the temperatures. The number of people on unemployment is going up. the number of COVID cases and COVID deaths are going up. It's not time to act as though we're coming out of the woods. We're about to head deeper into the forest. So COVID's only going to get worse. More people are going to be having to be making choices between going to work and putting their own lives and their loved ones' lives at risk, and whether or not they can pay their utility bills. So I just think this is maybe the wrong time to start focusing on some of this stuff, and we should just make sure that people are protected. Thank you for your time, and I'll wrap it up.
Thank you very much, Mr. Hall. Next, I will go to Ona Porter. Is Ona Porter still on the line? Prosperity Works?
Yep. Good morning.
Yes.
I am. Good morning,
Thank you.
everyone, commissioners and colleagues. I am from Prosperity Works and speaking on behalf of the needs of low-income customers. And on July 13th, I actually sent a letter to PNM commenting on their bill credit program eligibility requirements. And under the orders that are here today allows utilities to discontinue service to a residential customer for failure to make payments where customers are not participating in an assistance program or payment plans. And one of the things that we noted in this letter was that requiring families applying for that credit program to submit a personal identification of all the members in the household creates an unnecessary barrier for families and an administrative burden for PNM. And the pandemic and related social distancing and business closures, especially if they need contact a Social Security Administration office or other vital records office to do so, is unreasonable. The bill credit program really is one that we can look to understand what PNM might do when if there was a requirement for participation in one of the programs that assist individuals, and there is no articulation of which ones those would be. Now, one of the things that we learned was that to participate in the Good Neighbor Fund and the bill credit program, one would have to be a LIHEAP participant. And proof of identification in this for every household member exceeds the federal requirements for low-income home energy assistance program, which only requires one eligible person in the household to verify information. And PNM should avoid imposing such excessively burdensome requirements. Further, proof of all individuals' identification is not necessary to determine if a household is low income and is not pertinent to helping families keep their electricity on. The particular burden that this places on households with mixed status individuals is excessive, and it really deters people as opposed to includes people in any kind of relief program. So in addition to that, individuals who are low income and need to produce excessive identification and income information should not be required. I bring that to you today because simply stating that you have to participate in one of these programs without articulating what those programs would be and the verification that would be required is really a barrier to participation. So we urge for the extension of the moratorium and appreciate the consideration of the today. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next, I call on Castile Aguilar. Is Castile still present?
Yes, good morning. My name is Castile and I'm here as a representative of Yucca. Yucca is a youth-led organization working for climate justice with youth members from Indigenous, Latinx, local Norteño, and low-income communities in northern New Mexico. For us, climate justice means both environmental protection, sustainability, and economic and racial justice. That being said, our communities have been hit hard by the pandemic, and many members And many of our members are now having to do distance learning. So many of us are high school and college students. So in addition to needing electricity for our basic needs, we are now reliant on electricity and the internet for our education. In this time of both health and climate crisis, your role as regulators elected by our communities have never been so important. I want to start by saying thank you to the commissioners for their leadership in their actions to protect New Mexicans by passing the moratorium on shutoffs back in March, and for hopefully continuing to do that today by extending this moratorium. As you know, our communities were struggling before the pandemic hit. New Mexico ranks 49th in the nation for poverty, and 19.7% of New Mexicans were already living below the poverty line. It should be our top priority to protect our communities that are most at risk here in New Mexico, and oftentimes that is our everyday working people. Instead of punishing our households struggling during pandemic times, we should be putting them over corporate profits and help out our communities. By extending this moratorium, we will be helping our communities who are already facing so many hardships: our youth, our families, our elder, our food insecure, our housing insecure, our people. When we look out for our most vulnerable, it improves the strength of our communities overall. Big monopolies like PNM are not going to go out of business during COVID-19. In fact, because we are all stuck at home, we are all using our electronics so much more for digital learning, working from home, etc. People's bills are even higher than usual, and the utilities are benefiting from the stay-at-home order. Meanwhile, we see plenty of small businesses closing, people unable to find a job, people evicted from their homes, and people choosing things like doctor's visits or food over rent and utilities. With so many community members without work, the bills are piling up. We don't just need a moratorium on shutoffs, we need utility debt forgiveness. This is the time to hear our community's need for support, and this is the time for us to provide that support to our communities for the betterment of our state and our communities that are struggling through this pandemic by extending this moratorium. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much, Ms. Aguilar. Next, I will go to Eric Griego. Is Eric Griego still on the line?
Yes, I'm trying to make this work. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Great. Well, good morning, and thank you for allowing me to speak this morning, Mr. Chairman and members of the commission. I'm speaking today on behalf of New Mexico Working Families, which is a statewide organization of economic and social justice with about 12,000 subscribed members around the state. I just wanted to, I don't want to repeat all the data that you've already heard, but I did want to just, in the interest of figuring out a way forward, just wanted to maybe provide some suggestions as some of the public and other utilities decide how they can actually make ratepayers whole and not have to shut people's utilities off. Like others, I don't think this is the time to be asking ratepayers to bear the brunt of this pandemic and this economic crisis that we're facing. As others said, the top 5 executives of PNM together earn $10 million a year. That might be a place that we could consider making up some of the deficit that I think PNM's facing. I tried to find PNM's advertising budget online and was unable to do that, but I know for a fact that it's in the millions of dollars. That's another place that rather than promoting an image of public service and community mindedness, perhaps taking some of that money and saying we want to make sure ratepayers have the public utilities they need. I just want to, as a matter of context, this is not academic for me. I grew up in a family where we often faced having utilities shut off, and like many New Mexico families, and it's not academic. I have to say, I sense that there's a real disconnect between some of the folks who are representing utilities and what the average working New Mexican family faces. Families like mine growing up, families like the many people I represented when I was in the legislature who are in poverty, and having light or gas or water is not a luxury, it's a necessity. And navigating some of the programs like LIHEAP and others are sometimes just not, as others have said, not as easy or not as apparent, or even payment plans as we would think. So I feel like as New Mexicans and as public utilities, and I want to emphasize the word public there, and as a public regulation commission, this is a gut check moment. Like we're in a historic crisis. And if we can't come together and be in this together, if we're not in this together at this moment in our states and our nation's history, then I don't know what it would take for individuals who are part of this community, who earn their living in this community, who have neighbors in this community, some of whom are struggling just to pay the bills, just to keep the lights on, literally. So I just want to really urge the commission, first of all, to thank and acknowledge your courage for doing this, because I know you're getting a lot of pressure from a lot of folks to make sure that PNM and the other utilities are made whole. I just would like us all to take a breath and step back and look at what's at stake for the families who are really, really in crisis. Those are the folks who would be most affected by this. And I don't think I'm a little shocked and I'm a little ashamed as a New Mexican that we're having this conversation, that it isn't so apparent that this should be just done without the kind of debate and making the case that you're having here today. So I urge the commission and the commissioners to stand strong, to do right by your constituents. And I would really, really urge the representatives of all the utilities to think about your ratepayers, not about shareholders, not about corporate CEOs who make, in the case of PNM, 100 times what the median age and median wage for the average New Mexican is. Think about that grandmother, that single mom like mine, that community member who really, this is a life and death decision for her. And it really is, and I want to sound melodramatic, it really is. Can you keep your family warm or your family safe and your lights on? And can you cook? And can you keep your refrigerated food safe for your family? This is a crisis for us as a state and as a nation. And I hope that PNM and the other utilities who've spoken today will really decide if they really mean it when they say they're public utilities. And for the private utilities, whether we really are truly members of this community and whether we're going to stand together. And I thank you for your time, and I urge you to make sure the moratorium is continued. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next, I go to Selma Gutierrez, and the last person will be Tanya Lovato, and that's everyone that I have. Oh, and Rhonda Haynes. So that's the last three people I have: Selma Gutierrez, Tanya Lovato, and Rhonda Haynes. First, we will hear from Selma Gutierrez.
Thank you, commissioners, for allowing me to speak today. My name is Selma Gutierrez. I am the Santa Fe Mutual Aid Coordinator. I'm here on behalf of the Santa Fe Mutual Aid Network, also known as the Santa Fe Mutualista among the Spanish-speaking community. This mutual aid network was created in response to the pandemic. I wanted to participate today because our communities have been hit incredibly hard, with the majority of our members facing unemployment, losing income, and many not eligible for federal and state aid due to their immigration status. Since the start of the pandemic, our network has helped 849 members. All of these members have family members who have been also part of our community and whose needs we are here to advocate on behalf of. We helped our members with things such as finding food resources, to helping them with rental assistance, to helping them with the LIHEAP applications, and funds to pay utility bills. I'm here to thank the Commission for passing the moratorium on shutoffs back in March, and to ask you to request that the utility moratorium gets an extension to help those struggling to pay their utilities because of the ongoing pandemic. Having this moratorium has benefited our members directly because it provides some security, letting them know that their lights, phone, refrigerators, and the children's Chromebooks, basic needs and rights that every New Mexican should have access to, will be protected even if they can't afford to pay their bills right now. This is so important because so many of our members are struggling to find a source of income. In our community, many identify as immigrant. The immigration population has been impacted the most by the pandemic. 30% did not qualify for the stimulus check, therefore did not have any source of income while unemployed. Actually, 20% of them also lost their jobs due to this pandemic. Many members of our network resonate to these percentages. We also have to keep in mind the fact that 400,000 New Mexicans residents were really struggling to pay their utility bills before COVID-19. Those 400,000 out of the over 2 million fall under the poverty line. We have this moratorium continue because the pandemic is not over. We also know that the infection rates of COVID are spiking once again in New Mexico. This may lead to a second wave of stay-at-home order, many places shutting down once again. So many members of our community may lose their jobs again. Shutting off someone's water and electricity during a pandemic is also unfair. Many people need these utilities working because it's their basic need. Our members are clearly reaching out to organizations to help them pay their bills, but many can't even make ends meet. And the truth is that PNM and their shareholders should be helping out. PNM and other big utilities throughout the state, our monopolies, have been making profit for so many years that we've all had to pay because we haven't been given the choice of any alternative. So actually, we want to ask the commission not to only extend the shut-off moratorium, but create a mechanism for ratepayer debt forgiveness. We know that PNM and other utilities have received support from the government in these times, and we believe that support should be passed along to families hardest hit because of our community's need more than shareholders. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Next, Ms. Tanya Lovato. Is Ms. Tanya Lovato still present? Is Ms. Rhonda Haynes still present? I see someone who, let's see.
Hello.
Oh, yes, you're unmuted now. Who are you?
I am Rhonda Hines. I represent OLE. We are a member-based organization to better the lives of working New Mexicans. We have members all across the state fighting for workers' rights, access to quality education, democracy reform, and more. I also represent the essential workforce. I've been driving food delivery since before the pandemic, been working all through the pandemic, and I can tell you that even being able to work, all of getting harder and harder to meet bills, to pay utilities, to be able to run a household, and that's with a job. For those who are stuck at home with the stay-at-home orders, how much harder is it for them to try and make these bills without having to worry about their electricity or their water being turned off, especially once the weather starts turning colder? You know, we need all the help that we can get to be able to continue a normal life. Those who are homeschooling need to be able to get online, get on the internet with their schools. Those who are trying to work from home, also, you know, electricity and water, they're basic needs. They are definitely a necessity right now. And we would please extend the moratorium and guarantee all these people the right to electricity, to heat, to water, to, you know, the basic needs of life. Thank you.
Thank you. That is would conclude the public hearing unless the commissioners would like to make any particular comment at this time or question. Commissioner Vicente Aguilar, would you like to make any comment or question at this time?
Judy, can you hear me?
Yes.
I just want to thank you, Judy, for setting up this public hearing. I heard from everyone, and I think we are in a place where we need to make a decision as soon as possible. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Commissioner. Next, Commissioner Byrd, would you like to make a comment or question?
No, I think we need to, like Commissioner Vicente Aguilar said, I think we're about ready to formalize some rules and get this taken care of.
Thank you. Next, Commissioner Espinoza, do you have a comment or question?
Thank you, Judy, for conducting this in the most proficient manner. And I appreciate everybody's comments. They are well taken, and we'll be voting on that this afternoon or whenever we get off the phone here. So thank you kindly for doing this and all the public input. It's very much appreciated.
Thank you, Commissioner. Next, Commissioner Hall. Any comments or questions? You're muted.
Sorry. Okay, here we are. Can you hear me?
Yes.
I think it's important that we move forward to vote. However, I do think staff has raised an important argument that we should consider before we vote, because it might be a more preferable approach to amending our rules in a more comprehensive way to amend Rule 410 instead of 560 and 650. And I don't know where General Counsel stands on that, and so I would suggest we maybe want to vote on this in the next open meeting after General Counsel has had an opportunity to review those comments, because they seem like a good idea, and I noticed that the AG supports that approach as well. So that would be one thing I would say, but otherwise I agree we need to move forward with our vote.
Thank you. And Commissioner Fishman, any comments or questions?
Yeah, we'll have a chance to discuss this a little more detail during the open meeting. And I too appreciate all the comments. I will say I appreciate also, it was pointed out, the utilities did their own moratorium before we did one. And I do think there's lots of room for collaboration here going forward. And at the very least, we should start planning for what's going to happen at the back end of this. And the utilities are pointing out the issues that they're facing, which is fine. But we do have to protect consumers as well. And, you know, we all know who has the most to lose. And I haven't heard any of the utilities say that they're interested in cutting off people, but they do have some financial interests. And I think there's lots of room for us to work on this together. And whatever we do in the next week or two, there'll be plenty of work that we still need to do after that. So let's just get prepared for how we come out of the back end of this. And thanks to all for your comments.
Well, I would like to thank everyone for participating, and it seems like it went fairly smoothly. And with that, I will conclude the public hearing.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks very
Bye.
much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.